Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Perez Art Museum, Miami. I would like to thank all of you for joining us tonight for this program, with a special shout out to everyone tuning in on the Miami Downtown Development Authority's, the Miami DDA, social media platforms. Thank you. My name is Marie Vickles, and I'm the Director of Education. And tonight we are presenting the online version of our Local Views at PAMM program with artist Vanessa Charlot. This casual 30-minute conversation takes place every Thursday through the month of August online at 6 p.m. via Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Our virtual Local Views program is presented with the generous support of the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation and features Miami-based artists sharing their practice and discussing works of art from PAMM's exhibition programs that connect in various ways to their own work. As a 21st century museum dedicated to representing the diverse multicultural communities of South Florida, the Perez Art Museum Miami continues to strive to be a forum for open, honest, and at times challenging dialogue while striving to create understanding through the power of art. Tonight, I am thrilled to present Vanessa Charlot, who exemplifies why programs like Local Views exist. This program continues to remind me how fortunate we are to have artists like her call Miami home. And I know you will be moved by how her work speaks directly to this moment in time. Before I introduce Vanessa, I would like to acknowledge and thank the incredible team of people that work so very hard to make these programs come together online. Big thank yous to Anita Bram, Associate Director of Adult Programs and Audience Engagement, Alan Mueller, Membership Manager, and of course, our world-class AV team, Denise Faxis and Andrew Bird, with special help tonight from Lazaro Yanis. We couldn't do this without you all. Thank you so much. Okay, let's get started. Vanessa Charlot is a Haitian-American documentary photographer based in Miami, Florida, and St. Louis, Missouri. She shoots primarily in black and white, to explore the immutability of the collective human experience and to disrupt compositional hierarchy. The purpose of her work is to produce visual representations of varied human existences that are free of the oppressive gaze, while focusing on the intersectionality of spirituality, socio-economic issues, and sexual gender expression. Vanessa has worked as a freelance photographer and lecturer throughout the US, Caribbean, and Southeast Asia. And she has been published in magazines and literature such as Vogue, The New Yorker, Time Magazine, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, O, The Oprah Magazine, Vice, BuzzFeed, ArtNet News, and other national and international publications. Vanessa received her Bachelor of Arts in English Literature and Sociology from Florida Atlantic University, with a Master's of Educational Administration from Concordia University. As you watch along this evening on Facebook or YouTube Live, please post questions for Vanessa in the comments section. She will try to answer as many as possible during the Q&A portion of this evening's presentation. And remember, if you value this and other programs presented by the museum, please consider supporting us by going to pamm.org/donate. So with all that said, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Vanessa Charlot.
Thank you so much, Marie, for that amazing introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Charlot. I'm a documentary photographer and Miami native. It is a complete honor and privilege to be here with you tonight to discuss my work, my practice, and the reason why I do what I do. I've been documenting the beautiful complexities of Black life for a better of 20 years. My love affair with photography actually began when I was 12 years old. And my mother did not want me to attend the local middle school. And so with a disposable camera in tow, I went around to document and photograph people in my community in hopes of getting accepted to a school of the arts. And it is there that I began to fall in love with photographing people and seeing faces in photographs that reflect my own. I did get acceptance to the school, but it wasn't until undergrad at Florida Atlantic University, where I majored in English, that I would be able to contextualize my work. I was exposed to an array of prolific writers, Chinua Achebe, James Baldwin, Sonia Sanchez, Walt Whitman, but there would be one writer in particular that would have a profound impact on my understanding of self, the manner in which I interact and show up with the world, and how to center Blackness in my photographs. It was actually Toni Morrison that did this for me. And through her poignant ability to frame Black life, I delve intimately into studying Black life, capturing it as a Black woman of color, a woman of color. And essentially, I wanted to reimagine and disrupt the compositional hierarchy within my photographs. I usually tend to lean towards Black and white aesthetically when it comes to my photographs for two distinct reasons. One, I find it visually pleasing. But secondly, if you look at the photographs from the early 1900s and late 1800s, unless it was a Black subject, Black people were typically positioned in the back, to the side, and from a position of subjugation, which reinforced through art how insignificant Black stories were at the time. So I wanted to see photographs that validated and affirmed my own existence, and that existence being Black, woman, queer, of color, a child to immigrants. I wanted to center that as a visual rhetoric of understanding identity. And having the distinct pleasure of traveling around the world to make photographs, for the sake of this talk, I'm going to focus on three distinct places: Miami, Haiti, and most recently, St. Louis. In all the photographs that I've taken throughout my career, in addition to being an artist, something that I learned very quickly was that I was also serving a role of bearing witness. And that's something that I take really, really seriously, because it was clear to me that these amazing lives being lived by Black people and people of color would never really make the public discourse in a meaningful way. So I wanted to amplify these stories, amplify those voices, and share simple truths that are applicable to everyone, which are concerns in life that are focused around loss, love, death, sex, children, expression. And these subjects, these people that have given me the honor of photographing them, and photographing them in a very raw, authentic, and intimate way, have really forced me as a photographer to be authentic, to be responsible, and to be accountable as to how I allow my photographs to show up in the world. So now we're going to delve into my work in St. Louis. St. Louis is a beautiful city, but it has a very disturbing history when it comes to race relations. And after the killing of George Floyd, where protests erupted throughout the world, and protests happened in St. Louis as well, I felt compelled to grab my camera and document what was happening. And the reason why I did this was because I was aware that this was probably the largest civil rights movement in our history, in our documented history. And I was also distinctly aware that history is often told from the position of the victor, not the victim. And so within historical stories, it holds a lot of power as to how people view themselves and how they are perceived in the world. So what I sought to do was to, as much as possible, actively and accurately capture these stories and provide a counter narrative to what I knew was going to happen in terms of stereotypical tropes placed on Black expression. As a photographer, I am very fastidious. I'm careful. I'm consumed with the moments in between the breath. So I study life very carefully, and I study Black life specifically, very, very carefully, and the multifaceted ways that it manifests. So I wanted to explore in my work in St. Louis, this first photograph you're looking at, is what would make a woman, a mother, leave the confines of her home, mask in tow, in the middle of a global pandemic, with an upside down flag, sitting on the roof of a car. What would make her hit the streets? What is she feeling? What is transpiring in her mind? What would make young people go out and take over city blocks, defiantly so? What point are they trying to make? Why do you think that it's so significant to do this? This woman that I took a photograph of, I was actually in downtown St. Louis, and she sat in the middle of an intersection. There was this quiet strength about her. She was composed, but you can tell in her eyes she had this determination that her voice be heard and that the value of her life be affirmed. I also wondered what would make a parent take her child or his child and bring them out into the protests. Why was it important for this child to see this, to partake in this historic moment? I too have brought my son to the protests. So I understood in a very visceral way what was happening and what would make me do this. Whether you partook in the proverbial you, of course, whether you partook in these protests or not, there are universal themes or feelings that everyone has experienced at one point or another in their lives, right? Feelings of rage, pain, sadness, despair, hope, but also like this righteous indignation in the affirming and the value of your life and the ones that you love. So while documenting the protests, I was clear to not put Black rage and Black pain on center stage. I think that that's very stereotypical to see a very emotional, almost what some perceive to be irrational expression of emotion when it comes to people of color. Instead, I wanted to present these people as someone who is dignified, who feels a sense of urgency to partake in these actions in the midst of a pandemic. But more importantly, someone who is multifaceted, who has a family, who has people that they love and they care about, A lot of my work is about that. A lot of my work is about humanizing the Black experience. I'm also interested in what it means to be free in a highly racialized, highly sexualized world as a Black woman artist. It's this continuous battle, to be transparent, that I face to create photographs with the intent of being free of the white gaze, the patriarchal gaze, the oppressive gaze as well. And so my work delves into redefining what does it mean to be free. And as a Miami native, because I grew up in Miami, that is somewhere that I am able to move around very freely, and my work delves into that. So we're going to look at Miami work, and you're going to see how the practices, or my practices in Miami work, and my Miami work seeks to redefine and expand established definitions. In the photographs in Miami, you'll see a lot of Black joy, people smiling, people celebrating. There's also very close-up portraits. And the purpose of these very close portraits is because I want for my subject to really have the opportunity to be looked at. And I want for the viewer to look into the eyes of this person. Become curious about who are they, their life story. What are they about? The children that you saw earlier in the photographs are actually children that, when I was photographing them, they lived in the notorious neighborhood of Liberty City. And Liberty City has all these stigmas on it, right? I'm gonna go back for a minute. Liberty City has all these stigmas about it being very poor, very dangerous, but yet in the photographs you see children playing, they're on their bikes, and they're enjoying their joys or enjoying the joys of childhood. I think it's important for me as a photographer to photograph this because I want to normalize the joys of Black children, but also make people think about how beautiful their lives are and how comparable to every other child, their childhood innocence should be protected. And these babies are not yet bogged down with the negative stereotypes that come along with people of color living in poor urban center cities or urban areas. So again, I capture these photographs to challenge definitions and the manner in which we come to accept them as true. This was shot in Little Haiti. And the definitions around Little Haiti as well, and the people who live in Little Haiti, even those who live in Liberty City, are presumptive. Within the field of documentary photography, which is predominantly white and male, the use of Black bodies within a photograph is often pushed to the periphery of the imagination, so that the essence of this Black presence is not viewed as what is the most prolific thing in the image, but in actuality, centering Blackness in the photograph and that Black presence alone is what makes it prolific within itself. Okay. And since photography is merely writing with light, this visual literary work that has not always been told by those who look like the people who are in the photographs, I think it's important to be mindful of the fact that when these stories are not authentically told, it renders our understanding of identity half undone. So in my curiosity to disrupt the compositional hierarchy and censor Blackness, I want for people to essentially define themselves for themselves. I seek to speak to those whose identity has been dictated by people outside of themselves, compelling them to change their narrative from that of domination to that of choice. And it is this idea of choice and freedom that ultimately brings me to discuss the work in Haiti that I've done. Haiti is a deeply mystical place, but it's been unfairly presented in the media. Yet I would venture to say that this is one of the rare places that this universal idea of us being humans having, or us being spirits having a human experience stands to be true. Through spiritual practices like voodoo, you're able to see divinity in Black bodies, where the lois, the spirits, or the gods take hold of people, and you're seeing something supernatural happen. So in my photographs, when you see Black elderly people, you see young men take to the streets and partake in these rituals, I'm hoping to democratize the notion of divinity, making it something applicable to everyone, making the beauty of Black life something that everyone can appreciate. But more importantly, I want for Black audiences to see the validity of their own lives. And ultimately, this is the purpose of my work, to humanize Black life and the Black experience. My camera, specifically my lens, becomes an extension of myself, where I get to partake and share in this proverbial space of being connected to my surroundings and the people in it. And what I hope is that I create a sense of intimacy between myself and the subject, and ultimately the viewer and my photograph. Thank you so much for your time. I am very happy to be here once again, and I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was an amazing and intimate look to your practice, and we really appreciate it. The fans are going wild. So I'm going to start with the first question, which is from Kai Yansa asks, how do you compare race relations in Miami versus St. Louis during the protests?
Well, in St. Louis still has the presence of white nationalists. So when I've been photographing, I've actually had to encounter a group called the Proud Boys. I've been tear gassed by the police. The police actually are very, very violent. It actually feels like something out of the 1950s, where I see people getting hit by batons, and it's quite violent. But also, I think that the relationship to whiteness is different in St. Louis than it is in Miami, because in Miami, being someone of color, being an immigrant is something that's celebrated. And you're able to see Cubans, Haitians, Dominicans, all of us ascend to positions of influence within our community. And that does not always happen in a city like St. Louis. So there are amazing people here, but having representation changes the dynamics of power and the exertion of that power.
Thank you. For that, we are grateful for Miami.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Dorian Emerson asks, did you notice any changes in the St. Louis protests from when you first started documenting until more recently?
Oh, it's still going. It's still going. There are protests happening. It started, at first it was like every day, but now it's like 3 days a week. But it is still on in St. Louis.
Going strong. Good to know. Let's see. Zeb Gannon asks, says, thank you for your stellar work, Vanessa. I'm a huge fan. How has doing this work during these times changed you as a human being and as an artist?
Oh, wow. It has made me even more passionate and emotional when it comes to this work. Before, I used to be just amazed at the fact that we look amazing as Black people in the center of the photographs. But now I understand the importance of this work because those that are coming after us must see how we lived, how we loved, and how we interacted with the world around us. So it's made me a lot more present as an artist.
Thank you. Let's see. It looks like Dr. Eva Silo Bravo asked, how does white supremacy works in Miami cultural institutions? Are Caribbean Miamians rightly represented in local institutions?
Okay, ask me that again.
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna read it again as well. I'm reading it live as you are. Okay. I think the question is, how does white supremacy work in Miami cultural institutions? And the second question is, are Caribbean Miamians rightly represented in local institutions?
I think that white supremacy in Miami institutions, but period, works in a way to serve as a gatekeeper to who can interact with Black or Caribbean art, right? So they basically dictate what gets more of an eye, I think, and which artist gets more attention. Do I think that Caribbean artists are represented in Miami? I think that we are, but I think that there's a lot more work to be done. I think that we need to diversify the kind of Caribbean island artists that are getting attention. Because I think that there's a lot of us doing amazing things, not just me.
Thank you. I guess I have a question myself, which is, how rigorous are you in your practice? Like, how often do you go out and photograph protests? How do you approach people who you're going to take photos of? Like, how do you approach the process of it?
That's a great question. When the protests were happening every day, I was in the streets every day because I didn't want to miss anything. I wanted to keep my finger on the pulse. And in terms of how do I photograph or how do I approach people, I literally walk up to them and ask them, hey, can I take your picture? And sometimes when things are going really, really fast, I just snap the picture and then I'll go and try to find that person and say, hey, I took this picture. Are you okay with that? Because I do know, specifically in a city like St. Louis, sometimes people who are in protest, visual images can be used against them. So I'm very careful as to share images that people are comfortable with me sharing. I have images that will never ever see the day of light, like it's just not going to be shown because although the subject was okay with me taking their photograph, they didn't want that shared. And I respect that.
Thank you. Let's see, I have a question from Marie. She asks, how do you build trust when photographing folks? How do you capture intimate moments in your work during more challenging situations such as protests, etc.?
So that's a great question. Specifically in St. Louis, because I'm a Black woman, I automatically get some brownie points, right? I look like some of the protesters, I speak like them, I know how to move like them. And so because I'm able to integrate into the community, there is some trust there. But honestly, I start off by having a conversation. And so my camera may not be the first thing that you see. I ask people, how are they doing? Like, what's up? How are you feeling? In order to just establish some kind of rapport. And then I will tell them that I'm a photographer. So just in case if you see me with my camera, that's what I'm doing. So, but I will say that other photographers who have not done that have not been, I'm not gonna say that people have been aggressive with them, but they have not been able to gain the level of intimacy that I have because they have not taken the time to engage in conversation, which creates a very voyeuristic nature to photography, specifically when it comes to the protests, right? It's kind of like you're not in the community, you just want to take this cool shot and you come in, but you never take exploring their names. So.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see, we have one more question from Zeb Ginnan. Can you tell us about your other work? Haven't you lived in Asia?
Yes, I have lived in Asia. I lived in Southeast Asia. I was in Cambodia, and I went into a project actually photo documenting spirit workers, so monks in Bali, Hindu priests. And the reason why I do that is because I am indeed fascinated with capturing how divinity shows up in communities of color. Because when you look again at early Christian art, it's often white and male, right? If you look at the work of Michelangelo, it's very white. And so I wanted to have photographs that challenge that hopefully one day we'll be able to challenge the narrative as to what does it mean to be God on earth, so to speak.
Thank you. Sounds like there could certainly be more behind that, but for the sake of time, thank you so much again for sharing your practice with us, your work, and for doing the work. And we really appreciate it. And we can't thank you enough. So on behalf of the audience, Pam, Marie, everybody, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.